All right, so we have Jeff Denis here with Marcotte Ford. We also have resident parts expert and founder of PartsEdge, Chuck Hartley. And today we're going to talk with Jeff just a little bit about his operation, how he's adapted through the pandemic, and just have him explain a little bit what we do for him. So Jeff, I'm going to have you talk about your operation and just how the pandemic has affected you.
Sure. So I'm Jeff Denis. I've been parts manager at Marcotte Ford since about 2008. And it was my first job in the parts department. So when I started here, I didn't really have, I had zero parts background. Um, so that was quite a shock in the beginning. I went from a service advisor to a parts manager in one day. Um, so
That's the way to do it.
yeah, sure. Jump right in. Um, so right now our parts operation is, we have three different buildings. We have our main dealership building, where we do all our, cars and light trucks. Um, and then we have a commercial truck repair center, which is about a quarter mile down the street, which has another separate parts department in it. And then we also have a warehouse for our wholesale parts that is on the same side of the street. So we've got three different buildings that we kind of run parts out of. So there's quite a bit involved with transferring parts, in between the buildings and, in doing the wholesale operation, in addition to we do Amazon and eBay and, other forms of internet sales also.
Wow. And so did you find PartsEdge, or what was the reason for hiring PartsEdge?
In the beginning, I actually looked for something to try and educate myself because I literally had zero parts experience when I moved into the parts manager's job. And I had done it for probably about 6 months, and I knew that what I was doing, I wasn't doing it very well. And I needed help basically on how to, my biggest problem was like the stock order. I couldn't tell you why there were certain parts on my shelf or why we didn't have a part on my shelf when a technician would come up and say, hey, I've done the same part 3 times this week. Why don't we have it? And I didn't have a good answer for him. So when I looked into it, I came across PartsEdge, and I saw, some of the things on the internet. And I actually spoke to Chuck, I want to say probably 2 or 3 times actually, at length, even before we had even signed up or whatever. Um, and I just had a really good feeling about that he was going to be able to help me with, the issues I was having as far as, why I didn't have parts or why I had too many parts, and control of the inventory, because I didn't have a good handle on it. And I had taken over for a previous parts manager that had, a lot of these systems in place that I either didn't understand or I didn't kind of agree with how that was run. So I kind of want to start over.
Yeah.
And Chuck got me set up with a whole new source table, and a new stock ordering program that it made it much, much easier for me to understand, why I had parts or, how I was phasing in parts. So it made a world of difference where I could spend 2 hours agonizing over a stock order and still have it come out poorly. Or once I got, working with Chuck's system, I could do it in a half an hour and have a much cleaner stock order and know why I had the parts here. So it made a huge difference on um, my ability to order the right parts and have them in stock and not be collecting parts that I didn't necessarily need or had too many of them, which was going to create the obsolescence. So
Yeah.
over that, time frame when we first started, it's a huge difference on, how I handle the parts department.
So we've been working together for about 10 years now, over 10 years, right?
Yes, yeah, I believe
Yeah.
it's right around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how would you describe what we do for you? And just in your words, if you were talking to a parts manager, what would be some of the things you would describe that we do?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing for me, or one of the biggest, is the time that I save. And that time can come from a number of different places where if I try to make a report in CDK, I could maybe do it. I would take probably 10 times the amount of time that it should, and it probably wouldn't come out as great as it should. Or I can email, PartsEdge and say, I'm looking for a report within these parameters. And, you know, usually the same day I've got a report in my system that is exactly what I want. So I could either spend all this time to come up with a report that would maybe be half as good, or in the time it takes to send an email, I could have a report that's, much better than what I could have come up with. So I'm saving time there. And a lot of things that we've done also are to automate um, parts in the inventory. Basically, all my parts counter people, they're adding new part numbers every day, and they're just going into a basic source. So we used to manually do it where I would run reports and have somebody change them manually all the time to try and put parts in the right source. Well, we either ran out of time, we didn't do it, we never caught all the part numbers. So what happened is we'd be selling parts either at the wrong price because they were in the wrong source, um, just because it was a time thing that you never had time to keep up with. So with the automation that PartsEdge has put together, I don't even think about it anymore. My guys put the numbers in, the routine runs at night, and all the parts are in the right source the next day. So if somebody goes to sell them, they're going to price right, whether it be a wholesale job, a shop job. So
Yeah.
that alone, not only was it a time saver, sometimes it just wasn't getting done at all. So there's there's a number of things where I would have spent so much time on paperwork trying to catch up with that stuff, where now it gets done, and it gets done in a timely manner. It doesn't get done, a month from now when somebody finally has time for it. It's done that night. So that's a huge help for us as far as, we could be selling a part out of the wrong source and it's going to price it out incorrectly. And I might not catch it for another month. So it's potentially that we could have lost money there. And I probably wouldn't have not even known it. So having that automation is a huge help for me.
That's awesome. So then what would be the biggest impact on your operation of what we do for you? The time saver or
Well, it's hard to say one over the other. I mean, there's the time for sure, because in the beginning, when I honestly, I didn't have a good grasp on the job itself. Um, Having PartsEdge helped me through that, allowed me the time to actually focus on other things on the job that I may not have had time for. Um, you know, Looking for new wholesale customers, making sure everything was going well in both our shops. Where if I'm sitting here with stacks of paperwork, poring over that because I know it has to be done, but I wouldn't have gotten other things to help potentially grow the business.
Mhm. And that's very common. We find that with parts managers, they know what they need to do, and sometimes they can do it, and sometimes they don't have the time. So we bring that consistency so that they can do it. It can get done every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, earlier today, I emailed, Chuck and said, I'm looking for these three sources to be, doing these certain things. Now, I could potentially go in there, and because it's not something I do every day, I could either open up a case with CDK and have them try and help me, or I could try and, stagger through it myself and, figure out how to do it. Or I can send an email to Chuck and just, you know, within the same day or whatever, it's already done, fixed, and I can move on to something else.
Mhm.
So, sometimes when you're dealing with CDK, especially, um, the level of service that I'm getting is very frustrating, either due to the time um, or the lack of knowledge with the person that's trying to help me. They just don't know what I'm looking for or how to go about it. Where I'm not sure that there's anything that I can ask that PartsEdge hasn't already run into. So.
That's awesome. So, is there anything that you'd like to close with? Any advice you'd like to give any newer parts managers out there? Because I know there's probably a few.
Well, I would definitely recommend PartsEdge. I mean, there's a number of reasons. Obviously, time saving is one of them, but the knowledge that they've been able to, I guess, impart with me um, on a number of different things. It's not just, always just, part numbers, X's and O's. I've learned. I tell people all the time, I've probably learned more from PartsEdge as a parts manager starting at ground zero than anywhere else. And that knowledge helped me understand how to do my job better. Um, which obviously, um, my boss appreciates, the fact that, I'm doing a better job than I was when I started. So, but having that knowledge behind them and the ability to ask those questions and get them answered it was huge for me in the beginning.
Awesome. That's great. Well, we appreciate your time and value you as a customer. It's awesome. You have a great inventory and you're always awesome to work with.
I tell everybody all the time when, everybody talks, cost cutting and things like that. We're looking for things to cut. And I tell everybody all the time that, when they're looking at invoices and this, that, I said, the last thing that I would ever cut would be parts edge. That is I need that no matter what.
Aw-
So when they're looking
Wow.
at expenses or whatever, that's the one that no matter what can't go away. So it means that much to me here, and the ability to run, a parts department out of 3 different buildings. It's huge for me.
Wow.
Awesome.
That,
That's great.
yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Wow.